is video 5, October 9th, 2016. My role-playing partner understands that this is a counseling scenario for educational purposes for students in the Counseling Psychology Department of Toccoa Falls College, and he has signed a consent form. Hello, Scott. It's good to see you again.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. Tell me what's been going on with you.
I've had a pretty intense set of events happen. I can explain the events later if you think I need to. But ultimately, the root of my issue right now that I'm really needing some prayer and some counsel on is I'm having a crisis of faith due to the events that have happened. For the first time in my 25 years of being saved, or especially, I guess, let me back up, after being saved a while and growing in faith and having encounters with God that just really solidifies His real existence in my life. I've seen Him do things that are amazing, but for the first time in my life, I'm having some problems trusting that He's going to come through in this situation. And there's so much on the line. And it's really bothering me because without the trust in Him that I need, I lack peace very much so, because so much is at stake. And so, kind of in a nutshell, just really struggling to trust God because there's so much on the line in this particular incident.
Well, I know that in the past you have talked a great deal about your faith, and I just want to know if maybe you can just tell me, what does that mean to you? What exactly does, when you speak about your faith, what does that mean to you?
My faith is everything to me, really. It's everything I stand for, it's everything I work for, everything I live for. Obviously, my occupation is a pastor, and even if it wasn't, I still value my faith very much. It is what sustains me through difficult times. It's what sustained me through difficult times in the past. But for me, faith is not necessarily the assurance of God's existence. That is almost like in my mind, a known fact. It is, for me, faith is having hope that no matter what, everything really will be okay. And I've always been able to embrace that up until this point in this particular event. Everything else is totally okay, but in this particular time, that faith that usually gives me peace and assurance and everything else is sort of absent. But in essence, my faith is everything to me. It's my relationship with Jesus Christ. It is what I stand for and live for, and it's everything.
So you talked about a specific event that is happening right now, and we don't need to get into details about that, but I would like for you to tell me, if this specific event does not work out like you say, what is the worst case scenario, and what would happen if this particular event did not come about as you would like for it to be?
Well, that's where it is real scary, because if it doesn't, it is a complete life changer, not only for myself, but for my mom, who's getting on up there in the years, for the other party involved, for their children and all their siblings. This affects not only myself, but an entire family for generation to come. So that's what is scary, if it goes the way that it could, in the way that, it seems as if the forces of darkness seem to be prevailing and wanting it to go in the direction. It is a complete life changer, not only for myself, but for everybody else. We would definitely have to define a new normal. I would have to learn to deal with heavy disappointment, because regardless of guilt or innocence in that, my faith and hope is in God's mercy and God's power. The event is being blown way out of proportion. and we are utterly powerless to do anything about it. So it would be a complete life changer if it doesn't. And I want to believe that no matter what in this event, that everything will be okay. But I put myself in my loved one's position, regardless of right or wrong, and it's still incredibly difficult to fathom because it is such a huge deal.
It sounds to me like you have put yourself in a great position of responsibility in this situation. Is that right?
It is. I've never really been the type person that can detach myself from what another person is suffering. One of my dominant strengths, according to some different tests and some things talked about in the Bible, is compassion and mercies. I've always, even as a young child, far before I knew Jesus, I always felt very sorry for people. The things they were going through would bother me for days on end. I've even thought about, perfect strangers at night, who maybe are incarcerated and what their parents feel like and things like that. And so it's very hard for me to detach myself from that. I don't know how to. I don't know that I want to, because I don't ever want to become so cold and callous that I don't feel people's pain and things like that. And and especially when it is, your own family you're talking about, I do feel a big part of the responsibility. And so it almost feels like that if I mess up, my faith won't be. And I know that's not the case, but these are just feelings. I know they're not facts, but feeling states that, well, you have to walk the fine line and not, quote, sin, unquote, or else the prayer may go unheard. And I know I don't need to put that on myself, but those are passing thoughts. And I do shoulder a lot of the responsibility. Faith, my family looks to me as a source of faith and assurance, and just there's so many unanswered questions, not necessarily from a spiritual standpoint. There is. The constant suspense is almost torturous about not knowing what's going to happen, but as far as the unanswered questions from the family member that has gotten himself in this mess potentially, or the organization that has caused this mess, unjustifiably. There's a lot of things that do not make sense, and we're forced to completely trust God. And it's just scary, the fact that sometimes people do suffer unjustly.
Right.
I've never had to deal with that.
So I would like to go back to something you said about shouldering the responsibility in this. Do you feel as though the outcome of this situation depends on whether your prayers are going to be answered or not?
It does seem like it, but not only mine. I'm not the only one praying. Obviously, there's a lot of people praying. We've prayed that truth will come out in a way that will harm as few people as possible, and I truly do want that. I'm just, for the first time in as long as I can remember, I truly am struggling with whether or not that is going to happen. And so, yes.
Well, I know that we've been dealing with, you have been dealing with some major, issues going on over the last few weeks that we've been talking. And so it seems as though this is kind of the icing on the cake that was already developing before this event happened. Do you feel like your crisis of faith that you are experiencing right now has anything to do with the compounded events that have happened that led up to this one?
It's a possibility. All the other stuff in comparison to this seems so trivial, though, that it's like it doesn't even matter. Those things don't even matter. It's like once you're really faced with something this potentially catastrophic and serious, nothing else seems to matter. Everything pales in comparison to that. Obviously, there has been some, mental strain. You get to a place where you can only absorb so much, and this has definitely been a lot more than been able to absorb. It's been really hard to stay focused. And stuff.
Yes, well, I would like to remind you of the times past that we have talked about different situations, and I tend to disagree with the matters that you have been dealing with prior to this as being trivial, because at the time, to me, it seemed as though they were not. And it seems like maybe you have reached a point to where you, like you said, you have the inability to absorb anything else, and maybe you are putting way too much responsibility on yourself in this matter. Could it be that you feel like you are responsible not only for this event but for pretty much everyone in your life? I know that you're a pastor and that comes along with your job, but tell me, what does that job entail to you? Like, what does your job mean as far as what you think the extent of your responsibility is over people?
Well, I'll tag on the first part of the question first. I don't know. I obviously would pray about, the shouldering responsibility and things like that, because that would be something I would really need to take up the Lord to really be able to answer accurately. My initial thought in response would be no, because I went through a similar, not similar to this, but a similar bad season in life where faith was really being tested, and during that time I felt like if I did this wrong or that wrong, then it would affect the outcome. And God showed me during that time that even though Abraham made mistakes, God's will still came to pass, and God still blessed him with his best plan that he had for him. And so that's right now in a normal state of mind, I revert to that. The second part of the question, as far as pastoring, I do have a shepherd's heart and feel like I take a lot of responsibility. It may be a bad choice of words in that. I do carry a lot of people's issues and things like that, but I don't mind that to a degree because it prompts me to pray for them. It helps me to want to call them and be a part of their life and say, hey, how are you and your family doing, for example? And if things are not going well, it enables me to be a part of them by trying to shoulder some of the responsibility. I feel like that it's okay as a pastor to a degree, but not so much that it becomes overburdensome.
Right. But in times past, you obviously have had a great deal of faith in order to deal with all the issues of people that are under your care. You have exerted a great amount of faith in other people's lives. What do you think prevents you from displaying that same amount of faith now in this particular situation?
I don't know. I would have to think about that. I don't have an answer that pops in mind right off. It's because so far the answer or the prayers, the things that we've prayed have gone unanswered, which I know that unanswered prayers are not always the worst thing in the world, but the opposite of what we've asked and prayed for and what seems best has not happened. And it's just a lot more chaotic. I don't know a time in my life when as much has been at stake as it is now. And it just right now, it just feels like that it is just saturated with the absence of God. Darkness is definitely reigning over this situation. And then getting inundated with the thoughts that sometimes people suffer for doing good. Sometimes people have gone and done long jail time for things they were completely innocent of. And I've never really been faced with that. I'm not saying that particular member of the family is innocent or guilty. I don't know. That's what is tough, but it's just not knowing and knowing that they could be. And just because they are, and just because God's life is in control, may not necessarily mean that he will intervene. I mean, there's times that he hasn't, and my prayer is just that, somehow, like the Apostle Paul, there be faith and hope and purpose even in injustice. But it's saying it and feeling it and living it right now is something that I'm having a hard time marrying together.
Okay. Something that I would like for you to continue thinking about after we talk and throughout the next time before we meet again is you said that everything depends on your faith. So, and I would venture to say that your whole life, everything that you do hinges on whether you have faith in God or not. Because of what you do for a living, because of who you are a pastor, you are a shepherd, you're leading people. And so everything that you do hinges on whether or not you have a strong faith or not. And maybe you may be putting way too much responsibility on yourself and your actions and your prayers and your abilities in this, and not enough responsibility on the God that you serve. And so I would just like for you to think more about that in the next week or so before we see each other again. Do you have any questions for me or anything that you would like to?
Not that I can think of right off. How do you sometimes get in the car and say, "Oh snap! I should have said this or said that." So
Yeah.
I'll save that for next time if that occurs. So.
Well, I would just like to see you get to a place to where it seems as though you're putting a lot of responsibility on yourself that you really have no control over. It seems as though you don't have any control over this situation, nor do you in any other area of your life, really. And so the only thing that you do have control over is your emotions and your feelings and how they affect you and how they affect everyone around you. And so I would just like for you to concentrate more on those type things in the coming weeks. All right.
All right.
It's good to see you again, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.